Hey.
You're the best birthday present.
Hey, sweetie.
Our daughter's a yeah.
I love you.
Oh. I love you, but I gotta go.
Okay.
I know you, but I gotta go. I've been haunted with this thing all of my life, and I mean all my life. The only time I ever remember not dealing with this ghost, whatever the hell it is when I was married. For whatever reason, this is my fucking life.
Okay, welcome to the Flick Fair podcast. This is our very first podcast, and we're very proud in this podcast to have two amazing filmmakers to talk about their film called Entity. One little note on the side is the Flick Fair Festival, or streaming festival, is all going to be launched June 1st, along with this podcast and subsequent podcasts that will be made. So, my name is Mark Travis. I'll be your host, and today I'm pleased to introduce and honor the two men who are central to making this amazing feature film called Entity. One is Michael Yurinko. Hello, Michael. You're there?
I'm here. Hello, Mark.
Oh, hello. And Holt Boggs, the actor. You're there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, welcome. So Michael is the director and writer of Entity, and Holt Boggs is the actor. Now, when I say the actor, one thing you have to know, by the way, I've got, for those of you listening, because you haven't seen the film, a lot of spoilers coming up. I just thought I'd warn you. That doesn't mean don't listen, just you're going to hear a lot about the film. The fact that in this film, for I would say about 90% or so of the film, there's only one actor on screen, and that is Holt in this film. So when I say he's the actor in the film, he's the entire cast for most of the time. So welcome both of you. And before we get going with our interview here, I want to congratulate you on Entity. It's an amazing film. It's a courageous film. It's a bold film. And it's sort of a revolutionary and audacious film because for those of you listening who like horror films, you really should see this film because these guys broke a lot of rules and created some new ones, I think, in the making of this film. And so it's worth your attention and all that. So the first thing, and I want to congratulate you for entering into the Flick Fair Festival and being accepted. So the film will eventually screen probably sometime in June. So first question to two of you. Well, one little statement, as I noticed in the credits, both of you are also producers. So I'm assuming that you work together a lot, maybe in the concept of the film or the creation of the film, whatever it is. You can talk about that later if you like. But what I want to ask you about right now is, what was the inspiration for this film? What compelled you to want to tell this story? I'm going to start with you, Michael, since you're the director, writer.
Well, I guess I could really back it up here and kind of quickly kind of go through this. I saw the movie The Exorcist when I was about 13. So that might have been like 83 or so, about 10 years after the movie came out. And but a beautiful age to see that film. And back in those days, I don't think we were desensitized as we are now. So it really, made an imprint on me. And I mean, for years, I would just have the film mull around in my head, like, why her? What is this real? Can this happen? Like, I just was kind of floored by it. And so, I mean, you grow up and you broaden your horizons and you kind of move out of things and stuff. So, I still enjoy the film, but I wasn't impacted as I was as a kid. Fast forward, I don't know, good 10, 15 years later, I suffered an episode of sleep paralysis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so for anybody who doesn't know what sleep paralysis is, it's basically you wake up and you can't move a muscle in your body. You're fully aware, but you just can't move, and you have this just dread, absolute dread that you're feeling. Like someone's watching you, or something's going to happen to you, but you can't move a muscle. And it lasts about, I don't know, it seems like eternity, but it's probably more like 5 minutes. So that, again, was something that I kind of like, put in a catalog and I kind of forgot and moved on. So Holt and I were kind of approached by this one producer who had a little bit of money, and he said, I'll put it towards a horror film. So just kind of like spitballing ideas and stuff. And I took my curiosity of The Exorcist and the sleep paralysis, and I sort of came up with this idea of about a man who's trapped. And the question is, what was going on in Reagan's mind when she was possessed in The Exorcist? Like, what was her personal experience? What was she seeing? Was she seeing weird things? I mean, what was her reality? So that really was the kind of center point of where Entity was born from. And the original name was Hostage, which I thought was a better name. But, distributors and producers, they get their hands in it and they change things. But so, yeah, that's pretty much where that came from.
Wow. So, that's fascinating. And for you, Holt, getting involved in this?
Yeah, I mean, for me, he talked about the other producer we had on board at the time. I had known Michael for a few years. We'd been looking at some kind of project to work together on. And then when he first sent me the script for Hostage, I'd never seen, we've seen exorcism type films in The Exorcist, like you'd mentioned before, and there's been a lot of demonic possession films or series and that kind of stuff that we've seen, but I'd never seen one from this point of view before. Like he talked about, from what's going on inside their mind, and the fact that this film dealt with that on a very specific level. From an acting point of view, I just felt like there was just tons of room to play, and obviously a lot of freedom, like you mentioned. Me being the guy you're looking at for way too long in the first part of the film, but I was really, really interested. I'd never seen that done before, and so I begged Mike to let me read for it, and he did, and I did, and here we are.
Yeah. So, yeah, now this is fascinating. So, because we have, I'm going to be sort of transparent here in terms of the world of horror films. It's not a genre that I've watched a lot, and I have a lot of friends who've made some horror films and some rather famous ones too. But it's not a genre that I completely understand. But you've created a horror film where we never see the monster. We never, and it's, in fact, there's very little of the damage that the monster is doing. We see the effect that it's having on the main character, on Holt's character, but we never see. Now, was this a decision from early on as you were putting it together, Michael?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I guess I took a page out of Ridley Scott's playbook in Alien, where you don't show the monster. It's more effective that, what the audience brings to the film.
Right.
is far more terrifying than what you can conjure up.
Mhm.
It might not be what aligning with them. And the other thing too, Holt said early on, it's like, dude, I am not making a movie with a guy in a rubber suit in it. And I totally get that. I totally get that, because here we are, we're going to be on this endeavor, and it's going to be tough. This is going to be a hard movie to make. And the last thing I want is for you to be pouring your soul out and me wheeling out this Kmart issued rubber suit, and have you continue, pouring your heart out, So it's something that, for me, I was always afraid of the boogeyman, the unseen. And again, it goes back to The Exorcist, it's just like you never see that thing either. And then, look at Jaws with Spielberg, the shark wasn't working, but it just worked in his favor because you don't see the thing. So, yeah, that's definitely part of the plan.
Great, because it does create. I mean, for me watching it, it's interesting. I mean, for my reactions, at least personally, when I watch some films, especially a horror film, I have these conflicting reactions. One is I want to see the monster, and then the other is I really don't want to see the monster simultaneously. So it creates a lot of, for me, never seeing what he's battling. I think actually, and I'm going along with what you were saying, Michael, it creates more tension. And in fact, it puts me more inside that character, because my feeling is he's not seeing anything. He's hearing things and he's experiencing things. So that, I think it was, that's what I'm saying is what I said earlier about a bold film. It's a bold choice. It would have been safer to see the monster. In fact, I'm going to mention two monster films now, just for a second. One is The Quiet Place, and as soon as the monster showed up, the film fell apart for me. And I thought it was brilliant up until then. And another one was the Somalian film, was it called Signs?
Yeah, same experience.
And when the monster's showing up, and the baseball bat scenes at the end, I said, "Oh, come on! I'm no longer interested." And so I'm going. I'm really speaking in support of your decision to say we're not going to do that. We're going to have the man battling the monster, but we don't see the monster, because I think once it becomes physical, once it becomes real, you run that huge danger of us losing interest.
Yeah. The other thing too, you mentioned that, you're not really coming from the horror world, and neither have we really. My past screenplays, my past work, my past films, they're all dramas and things like that. Horror was suggested to us because there was an avenue to raise money. So we're kind of approaching it from that angle. We're not, aficionados of horror. So kind of applied the craft of dramatic screenwriting, and it just so happens that it's a ghost. You know what I mean? So I think it might have helped in some way. Maybe, I don't know. But the other part of it is not knowing the true fans of horror. It was hard to have a barometer where we were. Is this thing scary? Is this gonna, keep people's interest? Which, again, you run the risk when you have just one actor. How am I going to hold these people to the end where the payoff is? So it was tough.
And how are you going to hold us with only one character on the screen? For that, I mean, that's another to me, an extremely bold move, because you have a character, I mean, who doesn't get to relate to other characters except the dog, during 90% of the movie, or a photograph or something like that. That's also a very, very bold move. One other question I want to ask you, just a little bit, well, because I want to get into the actual making of the film. But big question, did you shoot this in sequence?
It's funny. That was the plan. We were going to shoot this in sequence.
For the listeners, I'm going to stop for a second. This 90% we're talking about all takes place inside one house. So there's not a change of locations except the locations within the house, upstairs and downstairs and all that, just to let the listeners know. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so that was the plan. I think that's always the best preferred way to make a film, because I mean, obviously it's a natural progression for everybody. And I had those talks with the cinematographer, and our plan was to kind of rig the house so we can just continually film anywhere in sequence to the story. And we tried that for the first day or two, maybe, and we quickly realized, like, yeah, no, we're losing so much time. So we had to do the old traditional flip the room thing and do it that way. But no, that was the intention, to go in sequence. Yeah,
because you have the challenge. So since you didn't, you have another big challenge, which is the continuity of Holt's character, the main character, through. If you're jumping if you're staying in one location, like the bedroom or any room, and then jumping time, you have to match his look and also his performance, state of mind, which is another enormous challenge, especially, and this, of course, is my favorite area, which we're going to get to later, which is just actors and directors working together. But especially for the actor, when there's no other actor to sort of keep you on track of where you are, you're just you in the house. If there's two or three other people, actors have a way of sort of helping each other orient to where they are in the story. But in this case, Holt is seriously, totally all alone.
Yeah.
So it's amazing. So, okay, big question now. You two decided you were brought together because of this project and because of the producer who wanted to make the project, and that's great. So, and the two of you are also producers on it, and Michael, you both directed it and wrote it. I'm really curious about. I'd like to spend some time on whatever stories you want to tell us about your relationship, the two of you, because besides a crew, it's the two of you alone making this movie, and how that relationship worked from the concept at the beginning and the creating of the script, or the analyzing of the script, or Michael. I'm throwing out a lot of questions. I know. Did you write the script first, Michael, and show it to Holt, or did you two of you talk about the script? How did all that go?
Yeah, I wrote the script first, and then once I got it to a place where I felt good, I sent it out. And Holt is painfully logical.
Good.
He will point out dude, this doesn't make sense here, or this. I'm like, wow, I didn't even see that. You're totally right. So from that point, it was a collaboration. And it was more like fine tuning it, and kind of getting it. And then, going into prep, Holt and I spent a lot of time on the phone. I mean, he was one part of the country, I was in another. And so we're on the phone a lot. And that was our, I don't want to say rehearsal, because it wasn't really technically a rehearsal, but it was different hats that were going on. Holt was putting his actor hat on, I'm putting my director hat on, and leaving the writer kind of like in the shadows. And well, we talked for hours about the script, and we were actually uncovering things in the material that seemed new to us, even though we were kind of working on it. And I thought that was just amazing, where you write a script and you can still unearth new things about it when you're talking with your actor about it. I was just completely blown away by that. And I think it's amazing that can happen. And, that was pretty much how we kind of prepped for it. And Holt was coming off another movie in Texas, and I think he had a week off, came right up to Pennsylvania. I think we had a couple days. We're just kind of like talking a little bit, and then bam, we hit the floor, and we were making this thing. And it wasn't a lot of, Holt, you can correct me if my memory's bad, but it wasn't a lot of directing. I kind of took a big step back, and I knew I got the guide I was right for the part, and I kind of let him go. And it wasn't a lot of tinkering or anything like that. And when he needed something, he came to me, and when I had an idea, I go to him. But it was sort of like just release the gates and we went.
Wow. So, any thoughts you want to throw in, Holt?
Yeah, I mean, the blessing and the curse of shooting something on a lower budget when you're an indie filmmaker is that you have these promises of money and they fall through, and you have these more promises of money from said investor and that falls through, and you get these dates you're supposed to start shooting and that falls through. And yeah, we definitely went through the yo-yo cycle or the seesaw cycle of that is what happens on films. But what was good about it was that it gave Mike and I just more and more time to flesh out the script and flesh out the characters and talk more. And by the time I got up to the Poconos, there on the location with Mike, I mean, we were kind of like an old married couple at that point. You know what I mean? I mean, we were like painfully familiar with, the material in every sentence of the text and the dialogue, when I had dialogue with other characters and every beat of the film. And so, yeah, when we got to working together on set, we both knew this fucking, pardon my language, this movie like the back of our hand. And then so it really was a true collaboration. We'd go into a space and when you talk about like the power of staging, and we would go into a space in the bedroom or whatever and talk through the scene, and Mike would ask me how I saw it, and I would tell him what my thoughts, and he would say, well, this is what I was thinking, what about this? And it was really a true collaboration. Then we bring the DP in there to kind of watch what our idea was as a team, and then and that's how basically things got set up. But it was probably the most collaborative experience that I've had ever.
Nice.
Yeah.
So in terms of actual rehearsal, it sounds like a lot of it was discussions over the phone, which are more conceptual or usually tend to be intellectual rehearsals. But in terms of the rehearsals of scenes or moments, in that, were there any rehearsals besides the staging, or was it, as you were saying, Mike, just stage it and let them go and see what happens?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it went. If you want to call it rehearsal, I was calling it, take one. So we were just rolling on it, and I don't know, I don't think we ever really kind of talked about this after we finished the film, and I was kind of going on the idea that if something was up, you would come to me and say, I need more from you,
right?
But you never did. So, and the way I was working is that if I say move on, that means I'm happy. It wasn't something that was kind of, so, when I guess that's where you kind of have to, have the movie kind of cut in your head, how the pieces are going to fit and it's going to work for you. There was a couple times Holt's like, no, I got to do it again. I need something else from this. I'm like, cool, not a problem. And being low budget, I don't know. I got this problem where I'm always worried about the day, making the day. So if I got it in one, I'm moving. Unless somebody has something else that they want to try, we're moving on. So I don't know if that pace helps. It might help some people, might hurt other people. But I was taking my cues from Holt. Like, okay, cool, we're good, and we're moving. So
a lot of pieces here were one take.
No, I think we did things generally because I would want another take, or the whole quote unquote one more for safety kind of a thing. But sometimes if we had a camera move that wasn't working, or a focus pull that wasn't working properly, we would do a couple of these for safety. But the one benefit by being the only human actor for a lot of the first part of the film was wasn't a lot of dialogue for me to screw up,
right?
So it worked out well, you know what I mean? And also too, I didn't have to get together with other actors at night to rehearse. So oftentimes even myself, I'm in my bedroom and I've already been to the house. I know what the house looks like. I know what my room looks like. I know what scenes we're shooting tomorrow. So I am running through it. I'm rehearsing basically with the only other actor that's in the film is me, and so I was putting that time in the nights before, and then Mike and I lived in the same house together as far as on location. So sometimes we would sit outside on the patio and talk through scenes and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of preparation and rehearsal with myself by myself or with Mike. Prior to rolling camera the next day.
Yeah, and I would think, Holt, that I'm sort of inspired by something you just said, because your character for a huge chunk of the film is all alone. In fact, is all alone with himself and in his own thoughts and mind, and has nobody to talk to. And allowing yourself, or Mike allowing you to be alone, even rehearse alone without Mike, might have been an advantage. Like, let's keep it all inside your head, Holt. What's going on? Let you struggle with it, and let's. I don't know. That's something that just struck me.
Yeah,
what you're talking about, because this is an unusual situation where you're directing an actor who, for over an hour and so much time of the film, the first hour and more of the film, is all alone. And how do you maintain that sense that he is truly all alone? If you keep messing with him, maybe you'll hurt it.
Right. That was definitely a concern of mine. And like generally on set, I always had headphones in, and I know I was for a lot of maybe the crew, I'm generally more social, but I probably appeared antisocial. I wanted to not have any much communication with people. I'd talk to Mike when I needed something and so forth and so on, but I'd have headphones in, listening to music or whatever, to not have any human interaction. And then right before action, I would always look down at the floor and I would try to find a space, and sometimes I would use my hands to kind of cover and find a space on the floor that I didn't see a C-stand or a grip's foot walking through or whatever, and try to imagine the rest of the room being completely empty with my headphones in. And so I would try to work on that, because that was definitely a concern of mine as well. Yeah,
no, I can see that. So you were shooting 12-hour days, and as you communicated to me before, Mike, pretty much you stuck to that and didn't go over, which is good, especially if there's only one actor, because he's working for 12 hours all day. Just a couple technical questions. How many days did it take you to shoot this?
We were scheduled for 15, but we ran into some issues, on the very front end of the production, which put us behind. So we actually went on shooting for 16. We grabbed a Saturday out of the crew's lives, and we did a pickup. So 16 days total.
That's brutal.
Yeah,
that's really, really brutal.
Yeah.
And even though you're still in one location in the house, but after a while that can become claustrophobic too. And now since I'm onto the house for a second, this house that you used, now we're getting into some technical things. This is a house you found that you felt was suitable, I'm assuming, which it is, for this story, because it's supposed to be like a vacation home out in the mountains and things like that. How much damage did you actually do to the house? Because I'm sorry, this is a spoiler. You'll see the film. You said they did a lot of damage to the house, or you did it very brilliantly, and there was no damage at all.
Yeah, surprisingly, not that much. I think that the only remaining marks on the house are there's a hole in some of the beams in the ceiling that we had to kind of drill into to do some support and rigging work. So yeah, other than that, the house kind of made it out all right. It's just paneling, and you should take it off, put it back on. I think the ceiling in the bedroom we kind of removed to get some higher angles, and then we put that back when we're done. The whole attic set was actually a sun porch that we raised the floor on, and
so it wasn't really
an
attic.
And
it wasn't really the top of the house,
right?
Oh, very, very nice.
No, it was a sun porch, and so we added that gable end, the louver gable that he kind of beats up and chews through, and then when he's kind of like smacking the roof in the attic, that was all built. That was a skylight that was there that we removed and just put paneling and insulation and drywall and roof shingles, like all the stuff you would find if you were busting through a real ceiling. But he was just going through an empty skylight hole. And then we boxed all these areas out and put in our fake snow. So, and then we shot the film in like June or July. So all that snow was fabricated and brought in and packed. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it looks good. It looks great. So
and that cabin is my brother's.
So it's
he lives in San Francisco, and he was living there at the cabin. He got it in inheritance, and he partied there for a little bit, and then he went to San Francisco, and he's still there now, and it was available, So we just
low budget film, and you've got a brother who has a house that you can use that he's not using. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So, okay, now back to the story for a moment. Without too many spoilers, but I'm not really worried about spoilers because people should just see this, and hopefully the spoilers will intrigue them to see it. I'll just tell you my experience of watching your performance, Holt, and the journey your character is on.
Okay.
Which is basically for the first 75 or 80% of the film. That's all I get until a few other people show up at the end. And what was happening to me, this is really to both of you, is my mind kept racing with what's real, what's not real, what's in his mind, what's not in his mind.
Right.
And there were some sequences I would watch again, and to be quite honest, I couldn't figure it out. And I think that's good. I'm hoping that's good because I don't know. I don't know if the death of the dog is real or not. I don't know. And by the end, I think, well, maybe I guess it wasn't. But it's not just that specific moment like that. It's the journey he's going on. How much of it's real? How much of it's imaginary? And how much of the best way I can put it, Holt, is the illogical behavior that he has at times is actually just illogical and irrational because it's all happening in his head, or he's slowly going crazy.
Right.
So I'm just sharing with you my journey through it and telling you by the end, I still don't have an answer, except I know it's a fascinating journey that I'm probably as confused as he was by the end. So I'm just sharing that with you and really want to, whatever thoughts you have on that, or, the other thing is, Mike, was that your intention?
Yeah, it's definitely, the film that I made before that, sort of kind of dabbles in that same idea. You're not quite sure, how far are we inside this character's head of this story? What's the realm here that we're playing in? And that was definitely in play here. And that, when you get to the end, I mean, the real end, when you know exactly what's going on, then everything else before, I think it's worth a double viewing, because then I think things might fall into place and have an enhanced, creep factor to it. At least, when we were, I rewatched the film before this interview, and it's like, wow, there's some kind of little cool things in there. I was happy about them. But yeah, definitely, you wanted the people to kind of like, is this really happening? Did he kill his family? Is just something he's going through as a guilt? What is this? To keep them on their toes.
Great. Well, if that's intentional, then it worked. It worked. It worked great.
The other part of that, though, is you don't know where that cliff is. How am I going too far where I'm never going to get this audience back? And it's it's like a flip of a coin. I think what it seems like half the people get it, half that don't get it, or half people like it and the other half don't like it because of these things. But at the end of the day, you have to make a choice, and
Yeah, like I
went
said at
for
the
it.
beginning about it being sort of, I think I called your film audacious or bold, or I may even called it reckless or breaking rules. I forget what I said, something like that. And that's one of them. The in terms of filmmaking, I think what you just brought up, Mike, is really important. Is how much do I cater to the audience to make sure that they're okay,
Right.
or how much do I risk losing some or losing all of them for a short period of time or for a period of time for the sake of the story I want to tell, and hoping that they can get it, or by the end, when they see the ending, they can flip back and put things in order, or put things I don't mean in sequential order, because the whole thing does play in order, but put it makes sense out of it later. And I think you're right, it's a big risk, and the overly catering to an audience can be just as dangerous, especially in a horror film. Like,
Right.
I got it.
Exactly.
There's a monster, and it's going to kill people, and it's green, and it has yellow eyes. I'm done. Can I leave now?
Right.
You run that risk of it just being, and watching some older horror films, which were classics when they came out. We look at them now and go, "Oh, that's too bad."
Right.
But it's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay. It's like a very close friend of mine made Friday the 13th, and I look at that and go, "Oh, Kevin Bacon's in it. That's good." But anyway, but at the time,
Yeah.
it was groundbreaking. So that's the other part of it, is that we all struggle with. Okay, shifting gears, your crew. And this, again, all these questions are to both of you. Working with cinematographer, production designer, and the third one I want to get into is the house as a character. But let's talk about production design before we get to cinematography. Any special challenges you had or thoughts you had? I mean, first of all, just to let the viewers know, the cinematography and the look of this film is extraordinary. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to watch. I mean, from the lighting to the costumes, or the costume or whatever. But even the makeup and stuff like that. But the production design of the house and all the effects that they do are extraordinarily well done. So it's a joy to watch it just from that perspective. So thoughts, Mike and Holt too, about the production design?
Yeah, so that was done by a guy named Matthew Engelbert, and he came out about a week or two before we started shooting, and it was all hands on deck for the house, because we had a lot to do. Like I mentioned before about the attic, raising the floor and taking out skylights and doing all that. There's another skylight in the living room that I drywalled over. And I have a background in like construction, so I helped in a lot, stuff. There were the sliding doors had a bunch of windows above them that we put paneling over, so there was less of a chance of escape, if you want to say that. But and so the whole bit with the trap door that goes into the attic from the closet had to match, and then cutting holes in the ceiling of the bathroom so the snow can go into the tub, and where that was in the attic, and like all of that had to kind of be mapped. And it just so happened that just the way this house was laid out, it all just lined up, made sense. Yeah. So, Matthew just stepped up and he sourced all of the furniture and the draperies and just put it all together. I don't think maybe the fridge was there, and everything else Matthew put together. So, and he's well, no, he was from Philly, so, but I don't know if he had really ties in the Pocono area. You have to go, you get on location, you got 2 weeks or so, you got to go out and you got to source this stuff. You got to start making some friends, and you got to make arrangements to get it to set. and he auditioned some things for me. It's like yes, yes, no, no, yes, and so it was
Well,
a
there's
lot to
so much
do
2 weeks is
in the amount of
short. I'm
time.
sorry, hold on. 2 weeks is
So
short for anybody.
yeah,
For such not only such a massive
yeah,
set, which is an entire house, but also knowing this is it for the whole film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Holt.
yep. And then the pictures and everything too, with that's all pre-production stuff that we had with the wife and the daughter. We needed to have all that practical. And,
Yeah, no, I mean,
so.
yeah, that was one thing that was, he had mentioned that I was on another film in Texas, and Matthew was also the production designer of that film, and uh, you know, he ended up wrapping not early in the schedule on the Texas film, but let go a few days early so he could go to the Poconos and start prepping that, and I just knew the avalanche of work that he had to do, no pun intended, and I was it was shocking for me to have a week off, go back to my home in LA, then fly to the Poconos and have this house like completely redone with, again, what he was talking about with the trap doors and everything else. It was uh yeah, really it was inspiring, just the amount of work that they did to create kind of the world that Eugene lived in. So yeah, it was nice.
Yeah. Amazing. Now, in terms of Mike and Holt too, in terms of working with the cinematographer, can you tell us, share with us, your wonderful audience here, some experiences you had, how that worked, challenges you ran into, whatever.
Yeah, so it being a tight location, it has its lighting challenges. That's I mentioned earlier about taking the ceiling out, and then things like that. And MJ, our DP, was just a shooting from the hip, free spirited man with a plan. So you just made it work. And then we shot on two cameras, two red cameras, and so that has its challenges too. I mean, now he has to accommodate two cameras. You can't put a light there or this or that. But it it's just kind of, I don't know. I was surprised too when we started cutting it. It's like, wow. And I started doing a color grade on it. It's like really bringing things out. And it's just, it came out great.
Yeah,
I'm really, really
looks
proud of the way the
fantastic.
film
Now,
looks.
when you're working, what's the cinematographer's name again? Okay, great. So
MJ
now
Marsnick.
On the day working with him, and this is why I think it's the three of you. It's you, Holt, and the cinematographer. Because is MJ also operating, or is there a separate operator? Well, you got two cameras, so you have at least one other operator.
Yeah, MJ was operating A, and then
Right.
a good friend of mine, Joe Gregg, was operating B
I'm
camera.
curious about the collaboration on a day. On a day you're shooting whatever is scene is, whether it's in the attic or the bedroom or wherever. How that team is working together, since, as you said earlier, you're exploring the staging and you're saying, okay, the staging could be this way, but now you got the cameras, and how does that collaboration between all of you work?
Well, a lot of that, I sort of needed to kind of make those decisions before MJ got up to even see the house, because a lot of that had to do with how things were built. So with the attic, when we're on a profile with Holt at the gable end and he's shoveling away, behind you there is a complete floor there, but it's a hinged, so the crew can get in and out of the attic through that spot without crawling through that little trap door. So I needed to have a spot. I had to pick a spot that this is where the camera's got to live. Once we can get in there and close that door and kind of maneuver, but that's sort of like home base, I called it. So I sort of needed to make some of those decisions without them. But it's one of those things where, if you're limited with your selections, I mean, that's when you can be creative. So if I give somebody the entire world, they don't know what to do. Like, this is all we got. This is how we're shooting it.
Great.
It's okay. Yep. I got a plan, So it might have helped.
Yeah, on my end, I'd worked with MJ on a couple other projects, and what's great is one, he's a really good shooter, but also two, he and I have a he and I have a good kind of a shorthand of I know how he likes to light things for the most part, and what he's kind of wanting to, as far as for me to find the light on certain things, but also too, just me being an actor on set, and not just an actor, but I wasn't just a hired gun. I was also helping with the producing of this thing. I was always also too constantly, looking at the day, where we were at as far as time, making sure we were getting our days made, that kind of thing. And so it really was nice working with MJ and kind of getting each other's sensibilities and working with Mike. Just, I think, made the day, he's very efficient. So I think it made the day, I don't think we would have gotten everything we got in the time we got it in if it weren't for basically the relationship the three of us had together.
Yeah. Now I'm struck by something. MJ is the cinematographer who you've worked with before.
Yes, sir.
Right? And Matt is the production designer
Yes.
who you've worked with on that film you were doing. It sounds like this is a group of people who had worked. Obviously, MJ and Matt, have they worked together before?
Yeah, actually, MJ also had shot the funny, quick little story. I was shooting the film in Texas, and then we had another DP that was scheduled to shoot Entity, and it didn't work out. And like literally by day 2, we ended up having to replace him and flew MJ up there. So Matt and worked together. And then MJ thought he was, he just wrapped up for the film that he and I just done. He was home for like 7 to 10 days maybe, and then gets a call from us and said, "Can you get on a plane tomorrow?" And that's how that all worked. So yeah.
Wow.
Key makeup, Aaron Volkman, production designer Matt, MJ, the DP, had just worked on the other project that I was on in Texas, and so I think that was it. Mike, anybody else that you know of other than? Oh yeah.
I think Jackie Hall came up with you guys, and yeah, and Fred Doss, our first AD, who also plays one of the priests.
So, which brings up another question. This, and we were talking about independent filmmaking. We're talking about very low budget filmmaking. That one of the great advantages it can be if you're working with people you've worked with before.
Right.
So I would love to hear from either of you, both of you, about those advantages, especially with this film and how it affected you, Mike, or how it affected you, Holt, having those people around you on your team who, especially like with MJ, who came in late but had to sort of pick up the ball and run with it. How that helped you pursue the film that you wanted to make.
Well, it didn't really help me at all because I didn't know these guys until they came up from Texas.
Forgive me. You didn't know them, but these are guys who had worked with Holt.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same production crew. Went from Texas up to Pennsylvania for the most part. Yeah. So the Keys anyway. But I guess in the way I looked at it is, I think there's a reason that directors and DPs and actors work together with each other time and time again. Because of that, it's hard enough to fight all the elements that go against you when making a film. At least you can go to battle with your comrades. And I can totally see that, being a thing. So, but it was nice to see everybody, click on that level. So it was one less thing that I worried about. It's like, oh, okay, these crew members aren't, getting along or whatever. There's none of that.
And how about for you,
nice
Holt?
For me in that end.
You just finished a film in Texas, and now you're shooting another one with a lot of the key people still with you.
Yeah, no, I loved it. I mean, it was an embarrassment of riches. For me, Entity was, in concept was scary for me. I'm not talking about scary from the story standpoint, but it's a risky, it's a risky thing. I mean, it's a risky film to have one guy, the main character, really the only character for the majority of the first part of the film, and so that's weighing on things. And then and then knowing that we have a limited shooting schedule, and then me not really knowing, you know, and just all the unknowns, and is this going to work? Is it not going to work? For the edit, do we have an idea for music yet? Because that's going to play a big part. Who's going to cut the film? Blah 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 blah. And then so at least there on the day, having a crew that I was familiar with, knowing MJ, very well at that time, because we just spent a couple months together.
Mm-hmm.
And then knowing Matt very well, knowing Aaron, who's makeup, who basically I'm sitting with for time, some time every day, made the hiccups that you have on a low budget independent film much more easier to deal with. And it was one less thing I had to worry about. Again, like Mike was saying, is not the weirdness and uncomfortability that you get the first day at school with the new classmates. Everybody kind of knew everybody, so oddly enough, Mike, the director, was the odd man out, but he got up really quickly, and we jumped in the cool kids club pretty quick. But I think it definitely at least on my end reduced some of the stress, and just let me deal with the stress that that I was talking about earlier, with just the unknown of trying to make this film work on the level that we had.
Right. Okay, now I want to shift gears now on you. I want to shift to post-production. One question to you, Holt. Were you involved in post-production at all?
I was not.
You were not?
I was not. We looked at, initially we had somebody else cutting the film, and Mike and I would both look at the roughs and give notes, but I wasn't in on anything other than that.
Okay. So to you, Mike, in post-production, my big question is discoveries. Mm-hmm. Discoveries, surprises, disappointments, whatever. I find post-production, I mean, obviously that's where the film is made. It's not made in production. And so I'm curious what your experience with this film was in post-production.
It was hell.
Okay.
It was pretty, it was earth changing for me, because it was out of my hands. It just sort of lived in somewhere in south of the country. I don't know what was going on. That we had a lot of unknowns, and quite a bit of time went by without even really seeing much, and then all of a sudden we got the call that, oh, this thing's got to be done in 2 weeks. We got a purchase order from
Really?
Walmart. I'm like, what? So it seemed to be a weird mad dash to kind of get this thing going. And I actually had to bring my desktop computer with me on the vacation I had scheduled, so I can look at, what was being done. And, at that time, I didn't really have any kind of means of post-production myself.
So
it was kind of brutal.
I'm really curious now, Mike. So this film, after you completed production, it went into post-production without you somewhere. And that was the original plan? Was that the producer's plan? Was that what you agreed to or wanted? Or how did that come about?
Well, really, from that point, like I said, I never had post-production means. So when they said, we're going to take the film and someone's going to cut it, I'm like, okay. I didn't really think like an option would be, hey, if I get a computer, I'll do it myself. I really wasn't even along those lines. I mean, cool. Like, show me what you got when you get it. And it was like a year later, I believe. It was quite a while. And then it was, like I said, it was a mad rush at that point. So, I did something drastic. I decided, okay, I'm gonna take this by the horns here, and I sold a car that I had. It's this beautiful '91 BMW that's in the movie. I sold it, and I built an editing computer. I taught myself how to build a PC, and I downloaded all the software and then started getting to work.
This is a great story. It's a sad
Yeah.
story, but it's a great story about a director who has lost control of the film for whatever reasons. Somebody is cutting it somewhere or not cutting it, and you sell your car so you can build a editing suite. So you can, and somehow you have to get all the footage back to you somehow, so you can start cutting it. So is this final edit? Is this your edit, or is it a combination? What is it?
Well, there are some cool things that the original editor did, and I just copied them. I thought they were good, but for the most part, this is the final edit from our version. There is this movie out in retail right now under the title The Darkening, and I believe Hostage, maybe? I'm not sure, which is the original edit. So there's actually two versions of this film. Yeah. So once we finished Entity, this edit, Holt and I decided, we're just going to take it out to festivals ourselves.
Yeah,
and
that's also a good reason to change the title because of the earlier one.
Yeah, I mean, what had happened, which was super painful, is, like Mike said, it took a year before we saw anything. And the thing is, that absolutely wasn't the plan. We were, they were talking.
I'm having trouble hearing you, Holt.
I'm sorry.
That's better.
Okay. Yeah, but as Mike had said earlier, that it was almost a year before we had seen anything, and that absolutely was not the plan. We were supposed to start seeing cut together sequences within 6 weeks of the time we wrapped.
Yeah.
But we were with a producer that kept putting us off. And anyway, that's a whole other legal issue and stuff that we dealt with. But they had not started working on everything. Just sat in drives and hadn't touched it until we got a purchase order from Walmart saying the deliverables are due in 2 weeks. I mean, no sound design, no cut, nothing at all. And so what was sent to them was a very rushed, I can't believe it passed any kind of QC situation. And I mean, it's an ungodly edit. I mean, just to call it what it is. And Mike and I were both heartbroken. I mean, when we saw it, we saw it. Well, I went and got a bunch of copies at Walmart thinking it's got to be somewhat good. You know what I mean? It's got to be some. I mean, it's got to be decent. And that wasn't the case. And then, immediately Mike, I thought he was going to have a coronary, but that's when he sold his car and said, screw it. I'm going to recut it and we're going to get it out there somewhere the way I want it to be. And, him doing that is the only reason that we're on this podcast right now.
Well, bless you for doing that, Mike. That's a bold move, and someday I'll tell you about my first feature film with a major studio, which I couldn't get back, because it's a major studio.
Oh,
they're powerful. Anyway, we'll talk about that at another time.
Right.
But so now here's a big question, because your film's going to show at in our film festival in June at some time. So it gets another release in a way. It gets out there again. But the question is not really about the release. My question is really about the film itself, the story itself. Imagine this, Mike. Okay, your film is cut together. It's your cut, and let's say it's playing. Say it's playing in a cinema, which may happen sometime in the future. They'll reinvent cinemas, but let's say 200 people see it. 200 strangers who don't know you. 200 people who just see Entity as it is, and this has to do with the legacy of your film. My feeling about films is there's the time of period of time as an audience member where you see the film. Then there's how the film works on you afterwards, even immediately within the next few minutes, the next few hours, days, weeks, months, even years. It can keep working on you. No different than what you talked about, like with The Exorcist and how that continues to work on you. And I know we all have films that we can't forget. Some we don't want to forget. Some we wish we never had seen, but we still can't forget them. So what is your desire for that audience of 200 who are leaving? What would you like them to be thinking about, talking about, worried about, curious about? What conversations are you hoping they might have amongst themselves or to themselves after having seen your film?
Well, yeah, that's assuming that they got it.
That could be part of it. I mean, part of it would be them still trying to sort it out
right
in their head. Yeah.
The one thing, and this sort of like kind of like drives me for, when I start a new script or whatever, I want people to kind of walk away from it seeing the humanity in Holt's character and in Holt's portrayal. It's, he plays the father, he plays the husband, and it's those things that I always strive for in writing. It's like celebrating the humanity, all the little things that make us us. And I'd like people to kind of take away that this was an honest portrayal of a person going through whatever, and that I can relate to him. I feel what he's feeling. And at the very end, when you realize he's still there and nothing's changed for him, who this person, the soul of this person is that he's still fighting. He's still looking to get that, to get out. That I want people to kind of walk away from. Is that
great? Holt, any ideas thoughts you have?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a two-parter in a way for me. For me, I'm an actor by trade. I told Mike when we first got on the phone, I don't do the horror movies are not something that I aspire or have done a bunch of, or it's not something I've wanted to or necessarily latched onto. But for me, I told him, it's a love story. For me, it's someone who's experiencing the loss of the most important people in his life, and in the matter of one day prior to the film starting, he went from having a family to being completely alone,
right?
And that isolation. And so again, what Mike said is I'd like the audience to see that and feel that as much as humanly possible. So then the stakes are higher for them. And going back to the second part, what do I want them to discuss? Yeah. I remember when I left the movie Seven, just, being in the car and being silent as I'm thinking through things, and the person next to me is being silent. And then, as soon as someone says something like, oh my God, what do you think? And you start breaking into it. But, when Eugene comes to, was that really Eugene, or was it not Eugene? Was it, was that ever him in the, inside the house, or was that, where was the demon, where was not the demon? And, those are the fun things that I like the audience to, have some discussion over and try to figure out their ideas, were they replicants or weren't they, kind of a thing. So.
Yeah. And one thought I have about the question I just asked you, if people are leaving and even asking themselves, who are my inner demons?
Right.
What are the demons that I'm fighting? However you might define what a demon is, but
right.
What is it within me, within my life, within my guilt, my shame, my whatever pain that I've been through? With this character, there's the mother and that story that the priest tells about the mother, but beyond that, what is he carrying within himself? So if people are asking, well, what am I carrying that is destroying me?
Right.
Something
Absolutely.
like that. If someone open up that, we're telling people what to think after the film. This is really good.
That's deep, Mark. That was really spot on. Yeah, that's the answer I should have.
I tell you, we can re-edit this. I'm not going to give you a chance to do that. Okay, couple more questions because we're getting near the end here. Just in terms of filmmaking, one thing that I'm as an observer of a lot of films and fascinated with, the whole process of storytelling. One thing I'm really aware of that with a film especially, but this is true of a script or a book, a novel, or whatever, even a play. The opening image and the closing image, how a film starts and how it ends are so crucial. I mean, and with your film Entity, if you change the opening, if you change the whole title sequence, the film would change. If you change the ending scene or the ending imagery, the film would change. So I'm really asking you, Mike, as a director, what thoughts do you have about or reflecting on how you open this film? Because you open this film with a very, in a way, frightening, causing a lot of tension, images. It's all a series of images. And where did that idea come from, and what did you want that impact to be on the viewing audience?
Well, we open up in the church with this really kind of messed up cello playing, and I was going for the anticipation of what is to come. It's almost like that cello just, the bow just dragging across the strings, and it's just a horrible noise. It's almost like heralding the demon, like it has begun. I'm in this world, and it's about to happen. That's sort of what I was getting at with those images at the church, which actually wound up back at that same church. So it's almost like a prophet in a way, which I kind of play and a lot of the other horror scripts that I write, that the demonic have this way of manipulating the future, knowing the future and whatnot. So it was something where we were going in the end of the movie, but it was also just announcing his presence. So, and then we move right into, this weird, out of focus blur of images that, it's hard to make out. Is it somebody's face or not? Again, it's just something that's just kind of, it's just kind of like, starting to pick at the strings of your imagination. And it just sort of like goes right into the sleep paralysis moment where it holds in the bed. And we kind of pull back from him. So we entered his realm, and now we're kind of like pulling out, and we're observing it from afar, and we're letting him, exist in this world. So that's sort of like,
because I know my feeling about that opening sequence is before I've even met Holt, the character, Holt's character. My feeling about the church is, the church is not going to come out well in this. That's right. But I think that's important, because you are. I mean, the thing is, the opening of a film takes us basically from zero, from nothing. We know nothing. Ideally, the audience knows nothing, and they just start. And within those first few minutes, even with the title sequence, which you did so powerfully, you take us from nothing into something. We'll get something. We will, and it may be individual too. That was my reaction, and the person sitting next to me could have a whole different reaction. But they will get focused on something, and then the out of focus shots of Holt, those blurry shots, which I think the first one I wasn't even sure it was a person, but then it was clear that it was a person. Those sliding shots, which are actually taken, I realized later, from the very end. That shot you do at the very end. So there are actually shots from the end, but that doesn't matter. It's like there's something amiss here. And now, in terms of the closing of the film, what were your thoughts?
Well, just to hammer home the idea that I guess it's sort of like the neon light of saying this is what's going on with this character. Holt is, Eugene is not free. What we saw was the outer persona of his body,
right?
And he's still in trapped in the cabin. And that reflection, when his reflection, which is not his reflection really, it's actual the demon version of Holt's laughing at him through that thick snow and the sliding glass door, and then Holt's all cut up and everything. It's just like, you think you had it, you think you're on your way out, but you're still there, bud.
Yeah.
And then Holt just doesn't give up, or Eugene, sorry. It's just it's I don't want to say it opens up for a sequel, which I don't think so, but I mean it in a way, it kind of lets evil win at the end, and sort of. I think the story's not over. I again, it goes back to his fighting spirit, and I think eventually his friends will figure it out, and they will save him. But no,
it's good. And also you bring back
profound.
the church again in a different way, with the priest and the crucifix that's there, and
Right.
It's almost looks like I almost stopped you, Mike, when you said to hammer home a point. I said, because there's a sledgehammer in that, but it almost looks like he's going after the crucifix, although the crucifix is in a different location. I mean, there's that shot of the crucifix. It comes to him swing, so it's him. I'm getting this impact of him against, and the priest comes off more evil in the end, even though it's the same shot, the same moment. There's something about that resonates with that of Eugene, the character, against an aspect of the church or something. He's still battling that.
Right. Yeah, that point is sort of drawn out somewhere in the middle of the film, where Eugene unburies the picture of Jesus. It's in the basement, it's in the box under a bunch of stuff, and he puts it back. So he is having a struggle with his own faith, and
but my feeling is his faith,
that was
the
definitely
church
an
is having
undertone
a struggle with him.
in the film.
Yeah, it has an issue with him.
Right.
Yeah.
Which comes.
Yeah, there's more history there, right? With Father Dario's kind of monologue there. It's this didn't start with Eugene. It sort of started with his mom, and this is something that's been going on. Which is another idea I was exploring. What was that about? And a woman who's pregnant, who is demonically possessed. Like, what is that? That's a whole other thing. So it's a big pile of mess
for our listening audience. It's a big pile of mess. Well, it's life. It's the life of Eugene. He's just having a rough time. That's all. So final questions to both of you, because we're nearing the end. We're at the end. But anyway, final questions to both of you. I'm going to start with you, Holt. Getting off of this film for a moment, in the future, what are your plans? What are your dreams? And if you, Holt, had a magic wand for your career, what would you ask for?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I just got off. I did a limited series not too long ago in.
Still having trouble. You're drifting away. Get closer.
All right, is this any better?
A little bit.
A little bit. Okay, I'll try to.
Okay.
I'm gonna give it a shot here.
That's good.
Being very,
go ahead.
Very intimate with this phone right now. I just got off of a limited series that I shot in Romania last year. Hopefully we'll make a decent deal with one of the big streamers. We'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, initially I wanted to just be an actor, and I've always asked about the magic wand. I really like the Tom Cruise business model. It's not really the kind of stuff that or necessarily the type of films that I do or don't want to do, but just how he structured his business end of things, where he's on both sides. I like having some sense of control. I've been in a lot of really, really, really bad movies, and I'm too much of a control freak for that. And so, I think I'm going to start producing more. I'm also doing a lot more writing. So, I think hopefully, fingers crossed, the best is yet to come.
So the magic wand question, Holt, is you're producing the films you want to make?
Yes. Ideally, I would like to get to a level of, I guess, for lack of a better term, star power.
Yep.
So I can cut the line at Starbucks or, sign autographs, but just so I can get stories made that I want to get made.
Great.
Just because I'm attached.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you. And Mike, for you, same question. What your plans are for the future, dreams for the future, and if you had a magic wand for your career, what would you ask for?
Well, we're working on putting more films together. I have a bunch of scripts that are written in another horror genre called Imperatus, and won a bunch of awards and whatnot. And we were pretty close to getting things financed when COVID hit. So,
absolutely.
I would like to kind of pick up where we left off. Yeah. And and during quarantine, I actually just finished up writing another thriller cop script, which is finally stepping out of horror genres. But really, I mean, ultimately for me, I'm kind of in the same boat with Holt about, creating material that I want to see. And I think I would love to be able to get to a point where I can cast anybody that I want rather than saying we need, big star to make this movie happen. Because I think going back to movies like The Exorcist, I really didn't know anybody. I think just Max Van Sydow was known, but he was in full makeup and 80 years old. You couldn't recognize him. But I think a lot of these movies kind of play more. They're real for me when they're not a Brad Pitt or whatever. So I like to be able to kind of call my own shots.
I wish for both of you that you get your magic wand wishes. Absolutely.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you. I want to thank you both, Mike and Holt, for this interview. Michael Yurinko. Am I pronouncing that right? Michael Yurinko. Oh, great. And Holt Boggs. I got that. I want to thank you. The film again is Entity, which will be screening at the Flick Fair Film Festival sometime in June. The date is not set yet, but if you're listening to this, you're on the list, you're subscribing, and you're following us, and we will let you know. I want to thank you. My name again is Mark Travis. I've been your host. I've enjoyed this evening, and I look forward to meeting you all at another podcast, and I look forward to you, Michael and Holt, staying in touch as we all go forward in wherever we're going and however the world is changing.